That's a tricky question. So obviously working in conservation is not a very well-paid job. Biosfera is based in a non-developed country, which is Cabo Verde. Like in African context, it's a really good country. But like if we're talking European context, obviously there are some big difference, right? So I don't know how to explain it, because obviously there are like different kind of like positions within NGO. So in this case, for example, the executive director is not gonna get more than 1,000 euros per month, okay, which is not a lot, definitely. And then we have the field assistants that they are getting around 350, 400 euros per month. So as you can see, the salaries are not that high, but you need to think that we are in African context. You cannot compare it with Europe right now. Right? But at the same time, working in an NGO industry, I mean, you are working because you have passion for what you are doing. Like in this case, I love my job. I love to be out there protecting the species, studying them, getting information. So I'm doing what I love. So for me, like the fact of earning loads of money is not a big deal in this case. I work with 5 of the 7 different species that we have in the world. But at the same time, I'm gonna switch to a very weird animal that not everybody understands. Actually, not everybody thinks that it's an animal, which are corals, okay? Actually, the coral is not the animal. The coral is a colony of polyps. So the animal is the polyp. And like a bunch of polyps, they form a coral. And a bunch of corals, they form a coral reef. So I've been working with coral reefs, with corals, with polyps, 3 years in Malaysia. Actually, I'm doing some work here in Cabo Verde, but it's not a really good country in terms of coral abundance. And it's an animal that I really enjoy, and I really love to protect the ecosystem. Yeah, it's actually funny, right? Because I'm not earning that much money. I study quite a lot. But again, we are not going to the fact of earning money. We are going to the fact of doing what you love and actually feeling satisfied with the results of your job, right? In this case, I studied in Spain. I did a degree of 5 years. It was together a degree with a master. So I took it in around 6 years in the university. And then after that, I just started traveling around the world. I never stopped studying. I basically stopped studying in the university, but I kept doing different courses, different fellowships, and like different internships around the world. So the formation is constant. You need to kind of like keep training and keep training and keep training. That's really, really important. We were talking before about technology. And for example, like when I was studying in university, I had no idea about drones. Actually, drones, they weren't a thing. And 3 years ago, I started working with drones, and that's like a totally new world for me. And nowadays, I can say that I have a long experience working with drones, doing monitoring, doing photogrammetry. There are like a bunch of different things to do with drones, right? So yeah, it's important to keep always getting training and get information. I've traveled quite a lot. I told you it's been 10 years traveling around the world. If I have to do a ranking, probably the top 1 is going to be Costa Rica. Costa Rica was a spectacular place in terms of biodiversity, in terms of landscape. Also, I'm Spanish. They speak Spanish there, so everything gets easier for me, right? I was living in a really small community in a very isolated place. I remember pretty well one day I was sitting on the beach. It was my day off. I went to the beach. I sat down there, and like in not more than 2 hours, I saw like 7 different big animals passing in front of me. I'm not talking about ants or insects. I'm talking about big mammals, you know, like coyotes, raccoons, I don't know, baranos, like plenty of different things. So that was a very spectacular place. And also in Costa Rica, I got arribadas. Arribadas is a kind of ecology that some turtles have, that they can come out of the water to nest individually. But when they come in arribadas, that means that like a big group of them, they come out at the same time. So I remember that day I was in Costa Rica. I was working there in a really small beach, like 800 meters length. And we got an arribada. So I remember that night that I counted 5,500 turtles at the same time on the beach. So by far, that was the most impressive experience, like nature experience in my life. I want you guys understanding that we are an environmental NGO, so we are not a social NGO. But at the same time, when you're working in a poor country with like poor communities, the poverty is the strongest, is the strongest obstacle to conserve biodiversity. So like if you are in a poor country, the first thing that you need to do to try to protect the environment is to try to reduce the poverty. So that's the reason, because we work quite close with the communities, like in different projects that we have. And also like our awareness department, the communication department, we call it, is quite strong as well. So we are trying to outreach like all the society of Cabo Verde and even internationally. And we have like different kind of projects, let's call it projects. So we have radio programs, we have TV programs, we have some magazines, as you saw there, that my colleague Natalie designed. She's amazing on that. We also have apps, like some games through apps. So all this kind of technology, all these kind of actions is basically to try to raise awareness in the society, just for them to get information about what is conservation, why do we have to conserve the environment, why it's important to preserve the different species. So that's a really slow work because it takes generations, but it's the most powerful one. So we focus quite a lot on that for two reasons. One, to try to reduce the poverty, as I explained before. And then the second one is to try to raise awareness, try to kind of like pass information, like spread the message around the society. In Spain, you can choose when you're in high school, you can choose to go for, we call it letters, like all the language, philosophy, all these kind of things, and you have biological or science degree, let's say. So you need to go through those ones, so biology, geology, conservation, and then like if you want to work in conservation, I highly recommend you to study like a degree about, for example, I study environmental science. It can be environmental science, it can be biology, it can be geology as well. There are like engineering, environmental engineering as well. So everything depends. You can study a degree and then you can pick what you want to work with or for. In this case, I did environmental science. We have like different kind of ways to work. For example, in a lab, analyzing water. That's something that I tried and I didn't like. There is like quite a lot of works in legislation, like in climate crisis, trying to, how to say, like in the energy industry. In this case, I select the thing that I like the most, even if my salary is very short. And again, I'm gonna come back to that because you explained it before. If you work for a really big NGO, as a Better Life, as a I don't know, any of the big ones, and you do like you are coordinating international programs, you can earn much more money. But you're going to be basically inside of a room doing paperwork the whole day. So if you want to be there out of the field, doing research, doing conservation, making an impact, obviously the salaries are going to be lower, but everything depends on the country and depends on the NGO. Highlight that most of the people that is working for Biosfera, most of the field workers, they don't have a background. So it's passionate people that we have trained and we have gave them a future in conservation. So slowly they're working, they're getting more and more experience, and like slowly they're increasing the salary as well because they increase the responsibilities. But most of them, they are local people that they didn't have the chance to study, and they don't have like university background. It's a very hard animal to study because, like, for example, turtles, once in a while, they come to the surface. So we can put the GPS device. So whenever the turtle pop up in the surface, we are going to get the signal. So we can study the area that the turtle are used. With sharks are not the same because sharks are all the time under the water. And GPS, in most of the cases, they don't work under the water. So it's actually tricky to study sharks. In this case, to try to gather information and to try to create conservation protocols for the future, what we do is internal tagging. So we need to do catch and release. We catch the sharks, we do all the work in the minimum time possible, within 1-2 minutes. So in that time, we take some measurements, we take some tissue samples to study genetics, and also we tag the sharks. So for tagging the sharks, we use right next to the dorsal fin. We always use the same position and the same place in order to be easy also to kind of like get recaptures, right? So we use that technique, and also we use acoustic receivers. So we do some internal tagging that's a little bit trickier, where we do a surgery, we put a microchip internally in the shark. And then we set some acoustic receivers under the water. So whenever the shark, which is tagged, internally tagged, pass close to the receivers are gonna collect the data. So in this case, we have some receivers in the island of San Vicente and also some receivers in the island of Santa Lucia. So in that, and we have tagged some individuals. So in that way, we're gonna analyze if there is some migration from island to island. And then in the future, to propose marine protected areas, all this information is gonna be quite relevant. Also for sharks study, we are using the drones as well, together with the team from the QMary. So we have a bunch of different methodologies. And in terms of tagging, I already explained you. We have a specific place to external tag the sharks and internal tag the sharks as well. And we have poaching problems with turtles, with submarine birds. So one of the first tools, or the most effective one that we have, is actually having people on the field protecting and monitoring those species. So if we have someone there, obviously poaching is not going to happen, or we are going to try to reduce it as much as possible. Then if we talk about technology, as proper technology, it's been like a couple of years that we start using the drones with the help of the QMary University. So we use the drones for monitoring turtles, we use the drones for monitoring megafauna, we use the drones as an anti-poaching tool as well. So we fly the drones during the night, checking the beaches and protecting the beaches. We also use like all different kind of technology that we have. We can talk about binoculars, we can talk about telescopics, we can talk about, I don't know, for example, for turtles, we also use GPS devices that we deploy on the carapace of the turtles to check the migratory routes. So we do the same with marine birds as well. We set some like really tiny GPS that we set on the feathers of the marine birds, and then we have to take it back to download the data in order to check the migratory moves of the birds as well. So we are using all those kind of devices. Then we talk about marine conservation. If we want to kind of check the deep ocean, we use ROVs, which is basically as a drone that from the boat or from the land, you are basically controlling remotely. And you can grab samples, or you can make videos, analyze a little bit the conservation of state of deep ecosystems.